Okay, this is a crash course in using the calculator that's going to be on the GED. You can practice with other calculators, but it is going to benefit you greatly if you practice with the calculator that you're going to get on the GED. That way you're not fiddling with it, you're not trying to find buttons. There are certain buttons that are only on this calculator, and there are buttons that aren't on this calculator that might be on other calculators that you've used. So the name of the calculator is TI-30XS. It looks like this. Make sure you get this. Don't get the one that has the 2 at the end, and there might even be some other versions of the TI-30XS. Get this version with these buttons. Now, I am going to put a link to a free download. I know it works on a computer. It's for a trial. You don't get it forever, but I think it's a 6-month trial. That'll be in the lesson. I don't know if it works on a smartphone. I haven't tried. If you just want to run out to Walmart or Office Depot or any other technology store that carries calculators, you can usually pick these up for less than $15. So if you can afford $15, then I would suggest getting a calculator you can hold in your hand. So this is going to be all the buttons that you need to use on the calculator for the GED. So obviously I'm not going to go over these, but you've got divide, multiply, subtract, add. So the first one I'm going to go over is the fraction key, which is this key right here, N over D. So let's say you had a fraction, 3/5 plus 8/9. Now you can do that the long way and do it by hand, but if you're on the calculator section, there's a much easier way to do it. So you just start off by hitting the fraction key, and it will put a fraction on your calculator. You just punch the top key in, top number, and then to get on the bottom of the fraction, you've got to use this directional button. This will let you move around. This can be used as a delete button, as a backspace button to type over things. You also have a delete button right there, but to move around, you want to use this key. So you want to hit the down key, it takes you to the bottom. Then you hit your 5. Now, if you keep typing, it'll put everything on the bottom of the fraction. So to get out from the bottom of the fraction, you've got to hit this key over here, the over key, to the right. So it should look like that. And you just hit your plus key, and then you got another fraction. So you just hit the fraction key again, put 8 on top, go down, put 9 on the bottom. If you need to continue typing, you would have to hit over, but if you don't have anything else, you could just hit enter. It will come up like that. Now, that is not a finished answer. If you've taken the calculator lesson, hit enter twice on accident, you know that that is an improper fraction, and you can't turn that into the test like that unless they're wanting slope. Slope is the only problem where they'll accept an improper fraction. So clear your calculator out. We're going to turn that into a mixed number, which will be a whole number and a fraction. So you hit the fraction key again, 67 on top, down, 45, over. So you want to get that fraction back in your calculator. Now right here above the X10N button, which you never use, you're only going to use the green. So anything that's green on this calculator, you access by hitting the big green button first, the second key. So if you look at the pictures, it'll remind you what it's doing. So the first picture is a picture of a fraction, and then it has 2 arrows. Anytime you see those 2 arrows on this calculator, or 1 arrow, it means change. So down here you got a big change key, and we'll go over that later. So this is saying fraction, change, and then it's got a capital U and then an N over D, which means it's changing it to a mixed number. So you'd hit the green key and then the X10N button, and all that should appear on your calculator. Should be an arrow with a fraction, with a double arrow, with the mixed number beside it, and then you just hit enter, and it will change it to 1 and 22/45. Okay. Does the same thing with multiplying, but this time we're going to put a mixed number in. So let's say we had 4 1/2 times 3 3/4. Clear your calculator out. This one's going to be a little different when you have a whole number in front of your fraction. You have a mixed number. You want to enter your whole number first. Now, you can't just hit your fraction key, because if you hit your fraction key, you'll get that and it'll put it on the top, and you don't want it on the top. So above the fraction key, you'll see in green there's a mixed number. Well, when you have a mixed number, you have to hit the second key before you hit the fraction key to access the mixed number option. So you hit the second key and then the fraction key, and it will put a fraction beside your whole number. Then you do it just like a fraction. 1, down, 2, and then over. And then this one's multiply. And then we have another whole number, 3. And then we have a mixed number, so we got to hit the second key again before we hit the fraction key. And then we got 3 on top, 4 on bottom, and then you just hit enter. 135/8. That should be obvious that that is not a proper fraction. It's an improper fraction. Now, I cleared it out last time, but you don't necessarily have to clear it out. Whenever you hit an operation on a calculator, it will bring the last answer you had down to the next line. So you can just hit second and the change to mixed number key, and it will bring that answer automatically down here and then put up change to. But if you don't, if you hit clear after every problem, that's fine. You just have to enter it again. And then hit enter. 16 7/8. So that should save you a ton of time on the word problems if you practice putting fractions in to this calculator. Okay, the next key you might need, well, let's go over the change key since we talked about that. This key right here. Double arrow means change. This key will change your answer, or just a number you have in the problem, from a decimal to a fraction and from a fraction to a decimal. And if you have a percent in, it will change a percent to a decimal and a fraction. So let's go over that. So let's say you had 0.125 and they needed a fraction. Okay. And you didn't want to do it the long way. The long way would be putting 125 over 1,000 and doing it out by hand. You could put 125 over 1,000 in a calculator and it will automatically do it. But an easier way is just putting 0.125 and then hitting this change key and then hit enter. 1/8. Super easy. Now, if you needed to go the opposite way, let's say you had 3/8 and you needed a decimal, there is a different way to do it. You can just type in 3 divided by 8, but there is an easier way. Hit the fraction key, 3, down, 8. Make sure you hit over, and then hit your change key, and then hit enter, and it will change it back to a decimal, 0.375. And let's say you had 65%, but you needed that to be a fraction. Okay, we haven't gone over the percent key. We'll go over that in a minute. But there's 2% keys, and it's important that you get them straight. The first percent key is above the first parentheses key. It's just percent. So if you have a number like this that already has a percent, this first key is the one you're going to use. Here in a second, I'll show you how to use this key, and if you look, it's got an arrow. So that key is going to change what you have into a percent. So if you already have a percent, you don't want to change that to a percent because it already is. So you would hit 65, and then since this is green, you got to hit your second key, percent, and then change key, the double arrow on there, hit enter. First one it'll take you to is fraction, 13/20. Now let's say you needed a decimal. While that's on your screen, you can just hit the change key again, and it'll change it to a decimal, 0.65. And if you keep hitting it, it'll keep going between fraction and decimal. But if you want to change it back to a percent, let's say you had 13/20ths and you needed the percent, then you would use this key over here. So to access that key, you would hit the second key, change to percent. It's going to bring your 13/20 down, or you can retype it in, hit enter, 65%. So let's do one of those. Let's say you had, let's see, 15/16, and you needed a percent. So you'd hit fraction, 15, down, 16, over, second, change to percent. Make sure it's got the arrow. If it doesn't have the arrow, it's not changing it to a percent. It's thinking that it already is a percent. So our percent would be 93.75. That's it. All right. Next key, pretty obvious, but I'll go over it anyway, that you might need is a parentheses key. So let's say you had a problem like this. 8 parentheses 2 plus 5. Now, if you know PEMDAS, you know that you'd work the inside first, then you multiply. But if you had this, it will do it for you. So 8, and then you just hit the parentheses so that the A's are right next to it. 2 plus 5. You got to hit that other parentheses or you'll get a syntax error. Hit enter. It does it all for you. 56. The next key that's probably used the most is the squared key down here, the x squared. So if you had 5 squared, and let's say you just forgot what that was or you're in a hurry, you can just hit the 5 key. Let me clear all that. And hit the x squared key, that key right there, and then hit enter. And it's going to be 25. Let's say you were doing a Pythagorean theorem question and you needed to know what 3 squared plus 4 squared was. You can punch all that in. Oops. 3 squared plus 4 squared. And it should look like that. Hit the enter key. Also 25. Let's say you had a exponent that was above 2. So let's say you had 5 raised to the 3rd power. This is a little different. So your squared key is there. Anything above squared, you're going to use this upside down V right here. So you'd hit the 5 key. You would hit this key. Some people call it a caret. I don't know why. And you see it raises your blinking dot up to the exponent spot. And then you would hit whatever exponent you have. Now, if you had anything else in this problem, you would need to hit the over arrow to get back down to the normal spot. Because if I didn't hit that over arrow just then, it would have put everything into the exponent, and you don't want that. You'll get the wrong answer. Hit it, enter, and you get 125. So right above the x squared key, there's a green little check mark, and that's called a square root. So let's say you wanted to take the square root of 25. So since that's green, we would hit the second key first. Then we would hit the x squared key to do square root 25, and then hit enter. The answer is 5, because they're opposites of each other. 5 squared is 25, square root of 25 is 5. It reminded me, whenever I've seen students accidentally hit the up key, and it's brought them up there, and then when you hit clear, it just keeps popping up. It will actually store everything that you put in the calculator, so you can actually hit up and go through all the equations that you've done and get to there and then clear it. Or if you get this on your screen and you don't want any of this saved, or maybe you just want it cleared before you sit down and start your test, if you hold the on key and the clear key at the same time for like 2 seconds and let go, it'll say memory cleared. And that way when you hit clear and you hit up, it's not going to do anything because it's cleared all that memory out. Okay, one key that you're not going to use during the test is this key right here. Okay, this is the pi key, shows pi. If you read your formula sheet, it will say use 3.14. That's how you get all of your circle questions correct on your GED. Because if you just hit 6 times pi like that and hit enter, it's just going to give you 6 pi. It's not going to give you what you need. You'd have to hit the change to a decimal key, and it's going to give you all of these because pi goes on forever. So you don't want the pi that goes on forever. You just want 3.14. So do not use that pi button on the test. Like I said, there's a delete button up here. So let's say you had a big problem typed in. And you went, oh dang, I typed this in wrong. That's not supposed to be a 6. That's supposed to be a 5. Everybody automatically wants to hit that clear button. Save yourself some time. Hit this back key, this key right here. Get on top of the 6, and then just hit 5. Now you can hit enter from here, or you can go back over and look at your whole problem before you hit enter. Okay? Let's say you figured out that you hit the wrong key after you already hit enter and got the answer. You can actually go back up with your up key to that problem, hit enter, and it will bring it up for you again. And then you can go back and go, oh, it was supposed to be a 6. You can change it back again, hit enter, and then it will change your answer for you. Those are a few things that will help you speed up. Oh, I was going to go over the delete button. So let's say you were typing and you had a long problem. And you went, oops, that was supposed to be a minus. Well, you can either hit the back button or you can just hit the delete button. And the delete button will erase the last one. Or let's say you were typing and you thought, or you accidentally hit that and there's not supposed to be a minus there. You can just hit the delete button. Otherwise, it'll give you a syntax error and hit enter. I think that's everything that you need to know on this calculator, button-wise. There is a darkness and a lightness button right here, but they're usually as dark as they come. But just in case, you can make it lighter, I think. I never have done that, so I don't know how that works. You just want to keep it dark anyway. If for some reason you set down and it's on the wrong mode, like if you buy it from the store, if it's in the wrong mode, which is classic, you don't want it in classic because here's the way it looks. When you hit the fraction key, it's going to do that. You don't want it to look like that. You want it to look like the way you had it. So if you set down and you start entering a fraction and it does that right there, clear that immediately. Go to mode, which is right here. So it says mode. Go down where it says classic. Go over to where it says math print and hit enter to switch it over. And of course, these should all be on the first selection, especially degree. You want it in degrees. Once you have it in math print, you can hit clear. And then when you hit the fraction, it'll put it over the top. That's how you want it. I think that's everything that you need to know on this calculator. There are lessons with the calculator inserted into it. A big one that you need to practice is Pythagorean theorem with their calculator. You need to practice some fractions with the calculator, but you also need to be able to do fractions without a calculator, because you might have a question on the beginning that you don't have a calculator yet. And I did remember one while I was talking, and that's the negative key down here. So let's go over that real quick. If you have a problem that says -4 minus 5, like that, that first number, that first sign in front of that first number has to be a negative sign. You have to use that. And it will show up like that, 4. That second sign has to be a subtraction sign, this one over here under the multiply, and then 5. So you get -9. If you enter it wrong, let's see what happens if you enter it wrong. Let's say you hit -4, -5, and hit enter. See, it gives you a syntax error. It tells you that it goes back to the spot where you got it wrong, so you can type the correct thing and get it right. Now, if you put minus, if you hit the minus key, it brings down your last answer. I've seen people do that. You don't want to start with the minus key. Let's say you had everything cleared and you hit the minus key first. It's still going to bring down your last answer. I don't know what it would bring down since the memory is cleared. Now, if you're multiplying, it's different. If you have -3 times -6, those both have to be the negative key because it's not a subtraction problem. So you hit -3 times -6. It should look like that. Hit enter, get +18. Let's say you had a negative on the outside of a parentheses with a negative on the inside of the parentheses, like that. In that case, they would both be negative. So negative parentheses, -4 parentheses, changes it to a +4. Same thing if you're dividing. -8 over -2. You'd hit the fraction key, hit the negative sign at the bottom, -8, go down, -2, enter. Should give you +4. I was thinking there was something else, but now I've forgotten. Oh, the decimal. That's what I was thinking. I didn't go with the decimal, but that should be obvious. 4.5 times 6.3. 4.5 times 6.3. Enter. Pretty obvious. Most people know that. All right, that's every button that you need to know in the calculator. There's lots of buttons that you're not going to use. You're not going to use PRB, you're not going to use data, log, whatever that is. You're going to use the green part of this key, but you're not going to use the white part. You're not going to use anything over here. Tangent, cosine, sine, you're not going to use any of that. X minus 1, you're not going to use. You're not going to use the pi button. You're not going to use whatever that is, or that. So, parentheses, percent, change to percent, fraction, mixed number, change to mixed number, change between a decimal and a fraction, negative key, square, square root, cube or above. Now there is a version of the cube root, but I don't think you'll ever need that. Clear, delete, and your arrow key, and your second key, and that's it. Okay, that's the end of the video.